My name is Ann Joint, and I am the president-elect of the UB Law Alumni Association. I'd like to take a moment to thank you all for attending today's presentation on behalf of the UB Law Alumni Association and its Gold Group Standing Committee. This is one in a series of programs that the Law Alumni Association is hosting on related COVID-19 topics that is being provided free of charge to our students and alumni. Our next program will be a CLE tomorrow morning on the Payroll Protection Program, what you and your client should know. Next Thursday morning, May 28th, we will have a presentation by law librarian Brian Detweiler on free and/or low-cost legal research sources available via online access. If you are interested in these and other upcoming webinars and CLEs, you can register on the UB Law website, and we certainly hope you do. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's program. As we well know, COVID-19 has hit the legal marketplace and we are now facing a recession. This is not the first time, however, that our students graduated into a tanked economy. During the last one, which began in 2008, job searching was brutal and obtaining a good law job could be a battle. Young lawyers had to be highly resilient and adaptable, and also had to learn how to develop, draw on, and work their personal networks. Lessons from then apply directly to the current situation. All of this, understandably, can lead to anxiety, but there are reasons to be hopeful and ways to take the right steps in a post-pandemic job market. We have with us today 6 alumni who were able to succeed in their careers despite the last recession. Our moderator is Jeffrey Gleason of Delaware North in Buffalo, New York. Our other alumni are Joshua Dubbs of Webster and Dubbs PC in Buffalo, New York, Matthew Feldman of Kiefer and Feldman LLP in Buffalo, Jennifer Oliver of Mogan Rubin LLP in San Diego, California, Jennifer Showerman of Woods Oviatt Gilman LLP in Rochester, and Jason Waru of Moog Inc. in Buffalo. Also on the call are members of the law school's Career Services Office, Lisa Patterson, Lisa Bauer, and Mark Davies, who will also offer their insights during the discussion. If you have a question at any time, please use the chat room and we will try to address your questions. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, so as Ann said, I'll be moderating the discussion today. I am Assistant General Counsel at Delaware North. I handle all of their gaming stuff. And so what we wanted to do kind of to start off is to kind of let you know what our experience was like, trade a little bit of a war story so that you can understand kind of the world that we started in or encountered very early in our legal careers. We'll each take a couple minutes to share, what it was like for us in entering into a world that was uncertain and an economy that was in a recession very early in our careers. On that note, I graduated from UB and went to Ropes and Gray in Boston, Massachusetts. And on my very first day of orientation, I was in training and the managing partner of the firm comes walking down the middle aisle up to the podium and says, hey, all you brand new corporate attorneys, just want to let you know, Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy this morning, so we don't really know what it's going to bring, but we know that the world is changed. And it certainly had. Being a private equity transactional attorney, there was no private equity transactions for the first several months of my career. So, I had to hang on for dear life. A lot of my colleagues decided to jump ship, change practice groups completely, going to bankruptcy or litigation or government investigations, any number of different areas of the law. But it took several months for me to get my first real corporate assignment in that world. Law firms were laying off associates, pushing back summer classes. It was scary. So I certainly understand the world that many of you are going into come September or after bar exam and bar study. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer Oliver. Why don't you give us your war story?
Yeah, thank you. So I actually am one of the panelists on this call who entered the workforce just before the last recession. So I went to UB, I did a JD MBA, and I graduated in 2007. So I did a summer associateship in Buffalo, one at National Fuel, one at Phillips Lytle. And then after my 2L year, I was a summer at Weil Gotshal and Manges in New York. And had an offer and things were great. But by the time I started, the economy the economy was strong when I started, but about a year in, things took a turn for the worse, and we actually handled the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy. And it was a very crazy time to be working at a big bankruptcy firm. I was not a bankruptcy attorney, but everyone became a bankruptcy attorney the day that Lehman Brothers filed. We all did Lehman Brothers work. We also worked on other big reorganizations, Washington Mutual, GM, among others. And so I ended up with quite a bit of work during the recession because we were at a bankruptcy firm. But what happened is when that dried up, that's when the work dried up at our firm. So it kind of depends on what kind of work you're doing. You can be very busy in a downturn. But when companies file for bankruptcy and they eventually unwind, which in Lehman Brothers case took a good 5 years, at that point our firm actually cut its workforce a little bit. So we had cuts more around 2013 or 2014. But I was very fortunate to work at a firm that did a lot of bankruptcy work. And the lesson I took away from that was sometimes you just have to pivot. And I was terrified. I was right there raising my hand saying, I'll be a bankruptcy lawyer. What do you want me to do? And the summer class that came in the year after us, or it might have been 2 years later, actually was the class that had the option to defer their start date for a year. And a lot of the big firms in New York at that time would pay most of the salary, I believe, if you just didn't show up for work. And despite that great deal, people didn't want to take it because they were worried, and that was understandable. But within a few years, things were recovering again. And I guess my advice would be to volunteer to do whatever work is there. Like Jeff said, sometimes you have to pivot. You have to consider changing practice groups. You have to volunteer to do a lot of non-billable work, to write articles, to do help partners do pitches, to help them prepare to speak on panels and whatever they do to do business development. Because at bigger firms, at least, to be honest, you're not doing a lot of business development in your first 2 years. You're probably not going to bring in that American Airlines client when you're fresh out of law school, but you can help someone else do it. So that's sort of my path. And I stayed at that firm for 10 years before I moved to San Diego 3 years ago. And I'm now working at a boutique firm.
Thank you. So you've gotten kind of two perspectives of people who came out of school and worked at big firms. I'd like to have Josh talk a little bit about, what it was like for him. He and I graduated the same year, but, we definitely had different experiences in how we kind of rolled with the punches that seemed to keep coming and never stop. So Josh?
That's true. So Mark Davies told me that people are having a hard time hearing me. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So yeah, no, Jeff, you're right. We did take divergent paths in 2008. Graduated. That's right when everything kind of hit the fan. And I was always very cognizant of the fact that big firm life was not going to be for me. I could not be a cog in the machine, an unknown face in a cube farm. So I kind of put all my eggs in a couple of baskets. I was really shooting for a judicial clerkship. But then again, so was everybody else with the economy going in the toilet. So that didn't really work out because the competition for that sort of position ballooned even worse than it usually is. And my first summer after law school, I interned for a judge in my home state of Rhode Island. Go Patriots. And the second summer, I was a law clerk for a small firm down here in Buffalo, Cole Sorrentino, Hurley, Huner, and Gambino. Small boutique firm, great people, but they were very, very upfront with me saying, look, we're a small operation here. At the end of your clerkship, there's probably not going to be a job for you. They told me that, right off the bat, which I appreciated. And guess what? At the end of my clerkship, there wasn't a job for me. So I didn't really have a lot of of options. I didn't participate in on-campus interviewing because I didn't really want anything like that. So I didn't really know what to do. So after I took the bar, I just kind of sat around the apartment watching reruns for a couple weeks while my girlfriend at the time, wife now, went off to work. After 2 weeks, I couldn't stand that anymore. So I called up a friend of mine who graduated a year before me, who was a staff attorney at Neighborhood Legal Services, and said, I'm going out of my mind here. Can you guys use an intern? And she said, no, we can't use an intern, but if you'd like to come and volunteer, you can. So that's what I did. Excuse me. And twice a week for about 6 months, I went and volunteered twice a week at Buffalo City Housing Court, defending evictions. That proved to be positive in two respects. Number one, I learned from the best how to beat up landlords like nobody's business. And that actually makes me a better landlord's attorney because I know all the mistakes not to make. And I know all the tactics that the legal aid is going to use to defeat you as a landlord's attorney. It also was instrumental in networking. I met a lot of attorneys that are in Buffalo City Court a lot, not just for eviction court, but for other stuff. I was in front of Judge Henry Nowak when he was in City Court. Now he's in Supreme Court. That's certainly a handy face to be in front of. So he remembers me from the times when I was a baby lawyer defending evictions, and meeting all sorts of people of different stripes, all sorts of attorneys that do all sorts of things, and you get to talking with them. Excuse me, you get to talking to them and they find out, oh, you graduated, take the bar, you passed the bar, now what? Well, I don't know. And everybody's very quick to want to give you advice. And then when it finally became obvious to me that I was going to have to do something on my own if I was going to do anything at all, everybody was in a big hurry to help me. They all said, well, once you get admitted and you get yourself settled, go buy yourself some business cards and make sure you get me some of your business cards. Because from time to time I get, I'll get a custody matter, or I'll get an eviction, or I'll get a small claims court matter, or I'll get a shoplifting case. I just don't have time to do that crap. But knowing that I was just fresh out on my own, they know that I definitely had time for that crap. So that's what I wound up doing. You get out there and you meet as many people as possible, and you let them know what you're going to be doing, and that you're willing to learn, and you're willing to handle some of the stuff that to many of the older, more seasoned attorneys may be considered quote unquote beneath them. But it's really a golden opportunity to learn and to get your name out there, to meet more people, to get some experience handling motion work, handling some trial work in small claims court and family court and stuff like that. You meet people, you do the trainings, you get forms from other seasoned attorneys and stuff like that. And that's really what I did. So I went right out on my own. I was admitted on, what were we admitted, Lisa, on the 26th of February, I think. And I think I officially opened up shop on March 6th. I rented space from a landlord's attorney that I had clashed with in eviction court. He found out that I was going out on my own, agreed to give me a break on my rent for a few months. And that's what I did. It was me, a laptop, a phone against the world. And I was out on my own for about 2.5 years. Then I did go and work at Friedman and Ranzenhofer. It's a small firm in Akron, New York, for about 1.5 years. Then I left there, went back out on my own, where I was for about 3 years. And then April of 2018, my partner, Dan Webster, who also graduated with Matt, Jeff, and I in the same year, he was leaving the Center for Elder Law and Justice. He came on board, and we formed our little firm here. Right now, it's just 2 of us and some staff, and we're doing the best we can. So that's my advice. Just take advantage of all the networking opportunities you can.
Thanks, Josh. I'll toss it to the guy with the most enviable background here. Matthew, do you want to jump in and give us kind of just a short kind of story about what your first experience was like coming out of school?
Sure, I'll try and be quick, and I'm not sure who you've been speaking with, that my background is deemed enviable. But my war story, mini horror story actually predates law school. I had a career before my career in law in software and technology, and I loved it. And that collapsed around 2000, 2001 with the market corrections. And it was the whole dot-com story. And it was hard. And frankly, it took me 15 years to restore the rate of revenues and earnings that I had working in that industry. So that was a process. But one of the things I gained through that experience was understanding that I wanted to have a trade. I wanted to have a profession that would withstand significant events in the economy. And we're all going through something terrible and unprecedented right now. But at least those members of us, who are on the panel, because of our profession and our situations, we're able to continue to work. We're going to weather and withstand this. And there's a grim truth that these challenges also present opportunities. So I went to law school in 2005, finished in 2008, graduating with other members of the panel. I approached law school a little bit differently. I was a quote unquote non-traditional student. I had my first child there. It was the first time in my life that I felt old. One of the shocks for me was discovering that most of my classmates had never had a tape deck. But my view was a little bit different because I was not convinced or determined that I wanted to have a traditional career in law. So one point that I want to emphasize for everyone who's an attendee who is facing this potential precipice looking forward is you are graduating with one of the most flexible degrees in the world. Okay, those of us who are practicing, we also interact with people who have JDs who are not practicing attorneys within client organizations. Your JD degree will add value and create a significance for you in almost any environment that you go into, whether or not you're practicing the profession of law. So whereas many of my classmates were graduating and experiencing some of the horror stories that you've already heard, and there were a lot of them, people who had done all the right things, achieved everything necessary, received the coveted offers, and then had them yanked. I was not looking for one of those opportunities. I arrived to law school and finished law school with some professional experience, also a master's degree and a focus on the Middle East. So when I finished law school and then took the bar, and even after that, I continued to apply, not for law firm positions, but I was applying to Moog. I was applying to Canon Design. I was applying to local organizations that had international presences that would recognize the value of a law degree, but were not necessarily traditional positions. So I want to emphasize that for everyone, that there may be traditional opportunities that are closing, but again, these challenges present new opportunities, and there are a lot of non-traditional paths that should be considered. Your ability to adapt and be flexible is a survival skill. So just getting back to how my story has concluded or led me to the present day, I was unsuccessful in finding one of those limited opportunities. I came very close at Canon Design, but the fact is, without practical legal experience, your ability to get an in-house attorney job is going to be very, very limited. So I eventually applied for and was accepted to work at a local firm called Hogan Willig. And it appealed to me because it was non-traditional in many ways. If any of you are following their lawsuit against the New York State Attorney General and the governor, it's clear that they're a little bit non-traditional. I had some good experiences there, and but after a while, I actually found that I was craving a more traditional environment. And part of what triggered a change for me was being exposed, and this is a nice part about being in a firm environment, is the variety. I was exposed to some various health law projects, and it really resonated with me. It felt like it mattered a lot more than a lot of other things that I had been involved in. And I actually consulted a little bit with my father, who's a health law attorney. And in that process, I started thinking, why am I doing this for another firm? Why? And I left out, by the way, I had been avoiding joining the firm that had my name on it for a lot longer than I've been there. I'm going on about 10 years there, but I had avoided it for a long time. I wasn't interested until I found out that I was interested. So about 9 years ago, I joined the firm of Feldman Kiefer. I had to prove myself there. I did. I'm now a partner in the firm, and it's been a great experience, and not at all what I expected of the traditional practice of law. I feel very fortunate that my pursuit of a non-traditional path landed me in this more traditional place. But that's my story, and I guess I want to share it. It's not without challenges, and it's not without complexities, but I think that the future remains bright and promising for all of you, and that you shouldn't question or regret your decisions to pursue a law degree. It simply may not unfold exactly as you expected. I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. We'd like to leave some time for questions towards the end of this. We'll go to Jen and Jason next. But you be cognizant of the time. We're only allotted for an hour here, and we'd like to get to some questions from the participants. Jen, do you want to go next? My old colleague from Woods Oviatt. Good to see you on the panel. Why don't you tell us, what life was like when you first came out?
Sure. So I graduated in 2010. So kind of, a couple of years into this first recession, I saw a lot of friends and classmates who graduated before me have their offers rescinded or delayed. And I had, legal positions after my 1L and 2L year. And so, I was lucky to have jobs while I was in law school, and actually had an offer at the end of my 2L summer for a firm that I was working for. They wanted me to move to a different area of New York, and I actually turned it down because it's not where I wanted to live. It was a terrifying decision to make at the time, facing the job market that I was, but I didn't want to have myself end up being stuck somewhere that I didn't want to be. So I turned it down, and I started 3L year, with no job, where I had classmates who had their jobs lined up and ready to go. And I spent all of my 3L year job hunting, sending cover letters out to every firm in Rochester because that's where I wanted to be, applying to every job I could find. And I graduated my 3L year with no job prospects at all, which was a little terrifying, but I knew that a lot of my classmates were in the exact same situation. So I focused on studying for the bar, and I think probably a week before we took the bar exam, the law firm that I had worked at my first year reached out with a contract attorney opportunity. And I took that because at that point I needed something. So I spent a year doing that. At least it was in Rochester where I wanted to be, doing class action litigation, knowing that that was temporary. So while I was there, I was constantly hunting for the next opportunity, and immediately got involved with the law school, with the Alumni Association, joined the Rochester chapter, the steering committee for the Alumni Association, and really found a great resource with the other members of the steering committee. Knowing that I was a new attorney, knowing that I was looking to stay in Rochester and looking to find a job, they were incredibly helpful as a sounding board when I did get interviews to say, is this a good firm? Is this a good firm for you? Is this what you want to do? And eventually, another member of the steering committee who was working at Woods Oviatt let me know that there was going to be a position opening up and that I should apply. I applied to Woods Oviatt, and I started there in September of 2011. I've been there ever since in the litigation department. So it was, my story is likely similar to a lot of you that are graduating right now, that you may be facing studying for the bar and having, very limited job prospects or no opportunity at all. And so my advice to you would be to stay involved with the law school and take advantage of all the opportunities that the law school gives you and the networks and the alumni, because, we want to help you guys.
Thanks, Jen. Jason, do you want to round us out here and tell us what it was like for you?
Yeah, you got it. And understand we're short on time here. So hopefully when we get to the Q&A, what I'm hopeful that I can help the students with is how to achieve some of these things in the absence of some of these resources that are really helpful. So going into law school, 2008, I didn't have any lawyers in my background. I didn't have any great academic pedigree that I was coming from, and I didn't have anybody else supporting my financial obligations. Despite all that, my objective was to be corporate counsel at an interesting company. So Lisa Patterson, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 2008, my 1L year, was the first year that the summer programs basically evaporated. Not like they shrunk or there were fewer, like there were zero. So my 1L summer, I worked for I had a part-time job with a local matrimonial attorney. My 2L summer, I worked for a company called Counsel Financial, and I had an internship with the Securities Exchange Commission. And my 3L year, I did start right in-house at a company called Steuben Foods here in Buffalo. It was very interesting, but I think if you want to be a really strong technician and work in some of the more sophisticated matters, you need the best technical training available. So I wanted to go to a bigger law firm. I did that at Hogan Willig. I wanted to get the best training possible, which in my mind at the time, I perceived Phillips Lytle to be the best law firm at Buffalo. So I went there for a few years, and when the opportunity arose, moved over to the Moog legal department. It's really cool and interesting. I would tell you guys real quick before you start asking questions, I don't think this is the time for anybody to be giving up on their dreams. I think you can get wherever you want to go with some good strategy and some hustle. And I'm hopeful that I can help with that. So that's all I got. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jason. So we'll enter into a little Q&A session here for anybody who doesn't know. There's a chat function on Zoom for any students or others who are not on the panel who want to ask a question. Type it into the chat function. I understand a lot of people might not be wanting to speak up on a Zoom call this large or at all. I certainly don't like to when I'm doing this for work. But just type it into the chat function, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So I'll kick off with with one of the questions that we were talking about when we were planning this panel is a lot of us who started our career kind of latched on to something to give us the comfort needed to kind of pull through what was a difficult time. I refer to it as our security blanket. As I related in my war story, it was just holding on for dear life, praying that corporate work would come back. But in doing so, I kind of latched on with a partner at my firm. So we'll just touch on a couple people and see if there's a similar thing that you've latched on to at the beginning of your career to kind of pull you through, whether that's a mentor or a skill or just a personal trait to get you through those times. Jason, I'll start with you. You were last, and it seems like you had maybe a few of these things.
Yeah, I think everybody's heard that expression, start off where you want to try and start off where you want to end up. I would add to that, remember why we're doing this. Why are you in law school right now? Why do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to help people? Do you want to make money? Do you want to litigate cases? Trying to understand where your destination is will keep you motivated. For those of us that have been through the big firms, I think it's fair to say that that's a demanding position. And there are times when it really helps to remember what your motivation is for being there. That'll keep you remembering that the juice is worth the squeeze. So in my case, speaking only anecdotally, I knew that I wanted to be a sophisticated attorney, but I wanted to do it in a way that I could spend time with my friends and family outside of work, and that I could have fun in ways that weren't required or you know, they weren't supposed to be business development activities. I can call my buddies and go to the baseball game. I don't have to take a client. So that was big for me. So in my mind, that objective, that's what kept me motivated. And I knew that I was playing the game by my own rules, and the other stops along the way, the law firms, the law school, they were helping me trying to get to where I wanted to go. But ultimately I was the one driving there, and no firm is going to hire you if you tell them your objective is to leave them and go work for a client. But I think having your end result in mind, not what job do you want, what life do you want? If you can get a good idea of that, that'll help motivate you through the tough times. And in the times now when you don't have a job, that's what helps you keep taking those shots. And that's what reminds you that when you get a rejection or something doesn't go your way, that's an opportunity to learn. You learn something. You lost that one for a particular reason. So knowing what the end objective is helps you figure out how everything you're doing contributes to that. It keeps you motivated. Good for the soul.
Thanks, Jason. Jennifer Oliver, you know, we definitely talked. You know, you were in practice when this whole thing hit back in 2008. So maybe you can weigh in on this too.
Yeah, you know, a few things I wanted to mention. The first thing was I should say that my path to getting that big law firm job did involve leveraging the UB Alumni Network. So the firm that I ended up going to, I don't believe did OCI at our school the year that I was interviewing, but I went on every single firm's website that I wanted to work at and sorted by, you know, there's usually a function where you can sort by what school they went to, and anyone with a Buffalo background, I reached out to one-on-one, emailed them and said, you know, I'd love to chat about opportunities at your firm or your career path. And every single one of them was open to that. And that's how I ended up getting the position at Weil that I did, because there was an alumni there who got me in for an interview. In terms of being able to stay once things turned down, my advice would be find a rabbi. That's what we always said at Weil, find a rabbi, because you need, you know, I think someone's mentioned, you know, the big firm being a cog in a machine, and it can feel that way. And when it comes down to it, you need someone who's taking care of you and taking care of your career and saying, no, I need this person on my case. And similarly, you need to be taking a position where you are somewhat not, you know, indispensable when you're in a very large firm. And so it really pays to say, I want to take this narrow piece of this matter, and I want to be in charge of this expert. And when you have even just a little piece of knowledge that that you're really responsible for, and it makes you sort of indispensable, even if it's a very small thing. You don't want to be just a cog. You have to be volunteering to be in charge of something, even if you're junior and it's something very small. And then, you know, it makes you very valuable to the team. But I did want to quickly tell an anecdote about my husband's career path too. And he didn't tell me I could do this. I'm just volunteering it anyway, because he summered in Cleveland, and I summered in New York, and we were kind of at that point where we had to decide whether he was going to move to Cleveland and I was going to move to New York, or we were going to stay together. So once I convinced him to come to New York, he turned down a job offer and was going into a less favorable job market, trying to find a job in New York. And he and I sat down and printed out probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 resumes and cover letters to every single firm in New York. And he ended up with one offer. It was a very tough job market at that time. And he went to the firm. It was a personal injury firm. He didn't love it, but man, did he learn. They were putting him into court on day one, having him just go, you know, handing him a file, go down, handle things. And he learned really quickly from that job. And what he ended up doing was contacting a firm in Buffalo called Cellino and Barnes, who he had interned for in the past, and saying, you know, I really think you guys should come to New York because I'm working at a personal injury firm here, and I think you guys could kill it here. Fast forward 1 year, he was the managing partner of the Manhattan office of Cellino and Barnes. Fast forward 10 years, he's now the managing partner of the San Diego office of the Barnes firm, which it's called out here. And so, you know, he went from three, and he loves to say, this is the point of my story, that he's going to wallpaper his office with all of those rejection letters. He hasn't done it yet, but you know, like Jason said, it was just a huge amount of hustle, and it ended up really working out well for him. So find a rabbi, definitely hustle, keep your eye on where you want to go, like Jason said. You know, he wanted to work for Salino and Barnes, and he wanted them to expand around the country, which they did. And it all worked out, but it does take quite a bit of hustle and mentorship along the way.
Thanks, Jennifer. There's a question from the chat that I'd like to toss to Jen Showerman. She touched on it a little bit, but you know, the question is if a 1L or 2L who might be on this call has yet to land a job for this summer, what can they do? You mentioned, you know, you went into 3L, you're not taking the offer from the firm you're working at during your 2L summer. This is pushing the timeline up a little bit, but you know, what could a student in that position do if they do not have a job for this summer yet?
You know, if you're still in a position where you're looking for something this summer, you know, rely on your contacts, rely on, you know, with people at the law school, you know, that have kind of these feelers out for different areas, you know, whether it's Rochester, Buffalo, anywhere in New York, or, you know, across the country if you're looking to go somewhere else. You know, you may not know where openings might be coming up, but, you know, people that have graduated, you know, are going to know, you know, if their firm is going to be hiring, if they know someone that's moving and a job's going to be opening up, you know, ask around, you know, your professors, you know, the career services office, you know, reach out to any one of us. I mean, I think, especially in the upstate and Western New York area, it's about who you know. You know, the job that I have now is because I knew someone that knew of an opening. And, you know, it's all about, you know, the people that you know. So I think, you know, work those connections and talk to people, you know, that are out working right now. Talk to your friends that have just graduated. See where those holes might be in the area, and, you know, and just, you know, keep trying. Don't give up. You know, like Jennifer said with her husband, you send out 300 cover letters, you get one response back, but that's all you need is just one. So, you know, don't give up, and, you know, get those letters out there, and, you know, keep hounding people. I think, you know, persistence and perseverance is what's going to pay off at the end of the day.
Josh, do you wanna weigh in? Oh, sorry, yeah, I'm muted. Josh, do you want to weigh in here? You know, if a 1L or 2L does not have a job for this summer, what can they do?
I mean, I agree with everything that Jen said. You know, and particularly, especially in the Buffalo and Rochester area, you know, there are also opportunities if you can do without, you know, a paying legal gig, you know, either by having another part-time job, or, you know, God forbid you just have the ability to do that. I mean, there's any number of volunteer opportunities. You know, any of the legal aid societies will gladly take on volunteer work, as will any judges. Judge Asa Mosey, who's the surrogate here in Erie County, they take on interns every summer. And Judge Mosey's a fan of saying, we don't have copies and coffee interns here. They actually put you to work. They give you motion practices, stick you in the library, and says, you know, I want a 3-page opinion on what you think I should rule here. And I want it by Friday. So, you know, that's a golden opportunity to get into that sort of thing. And then, you know, especially somebody like Judge Mosey is, you know, pretty good person to know. You know, she's got her ear to the ground about, you know, job opportunities and stuff like that. I imagine, I mean, I don't practice in Supreme Court too much, but I got to imagine same's got to be similar just about anywhere. If you're in family court or in Supreme Court or in county court, I mean, the judges are all dialed into the community. So if you get an internship with them, do good work, make an impression, it will, as Jen said, it's about who you know. That could spell out dividends for you later on.
Actually, just to add one more thing onto that, I thought of that. I'm on the hiring committee now for Woods-Oviatt for our summer associate program. So, you know, and I know, you know, at this point, you know, it may be tough to find a legal job, you know, for 1Ls and 2Ls given the market right now. You know, if you can't find a legal job, you know, find something to do, you know, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's a non-legal job at all, you know, find something to do that will give you, you know, service skills and, you know, customer interaction. At the end of the day, you know, the practice of law is customer service. So if there's something you can do to develop those skills in solving problems, working with other people, that will translate, you know, into further legal positions, or at least, you know, give you some experience that you can later parlay into some sort of legal experience. You know, keep active, you know, even if it's not legal work, do something, and, you know, keep keep going and keep those connections up.
This is Matthew, and I just want to underscore what Jen said. There's not going to be a job for everyone coming out, an attorney job, but there should be opportunities, and just working in any setting is going to be preferable to not working. Almost any type of experience you get, particularly unpleasant experience, is going to help prepare you for your legal career.
Jason, you want to add something?
Yeah, I thought it was a great comment by Jen. I think another way to say the same thing is just stay in the game. In my opinion, having hung around for this long, my contemporaries that just quit because they didn't get the jobs they wanted, you know, now when I'm out there applying for jobs, there are much fewer of folks from my class who stuck around this long. So agreed, the best option is to get a job in your chosen field, chosen practice area. But if you can't do that, you've got to support yourself. You know, you've got a kind of virtual part-time job of staying connected to that industry or staying on the path. And if you hang around long enough and if you keep hustling, sooner or later you will get a shot. And I'll say too that from working with a lot of the young students at UB, the lack of follow through on some of these things is amazing to me. And I can tell the students that are listening, it sounds a little coarse to say it this way, but your advantage should be that you will be hustling when your competition is quitting. And if you can stay in the game and if you can keep working, you will get your shot.
By the way, now is a great time to do that because no one's got anything to do. We're not in court. We're not in meetings. We're not at lunches. We are sitting around at home. So if you reach out to an alumni and say, hey, you know, I would love to talk to you briefly on Zoom. Do you have 15, 20 minutes for me to talk about your career path? It's a little hard to say no to that because no one's got anywhere to be. So it's a great time really to do those connections virtually and take advantage of this time when a lot of attorneys have a little bit of a lull. I mean, we're working hard. I'm sure a lot of attorneys are working hard, but with courts and things closed, it's a little bit of an opportunity, I think.
Jen, I think that's an excellent point, and something that I use in my own career as a rookie attorney. I would find law firm memos written on an issue that I was researching by, you know, Watkel, Skadden, and I would call those lawyers up, and I would say, I'd show a little humility. Hi, I'm Jason Warrow. I'm a new attorney. You wrote this article. I thought it was excellent. I understand you can't give me legal advice, but would you mind talking me through this hypothetical issue? And if you're in a position where everyone's sitting around, nobody's going to court, sometimes you get that $1,000 call for free. You know, many times they're happy to talk and give you their time. So I think those things, you know, you're asking for perspective. Everybody knows you're looking for a job. If a lawyer has a job and they can help you, they will. But an opportunity to show them that you're smart and you're out there hustling is just that.
Brilliant. Use the flattery. I love your article. Let's talk about it because, you know, that person's husband or wife doesn't want to hear about distressed assets and whatever they wrote about. So they want to talk to someone about it.
Sage advice right there.
There's a question from the chat that kind of, you know, touches a couple different points of what we've been talking about here. You know, how do you handle the financial burdens when there's no income from volunteering? You know, a couple people have said there's almost a place here to have 2 part-time or even 2 full-time jobs. One that's going to pay the bills, which, you know, might not be a legal job. You know, when I was in law school, I tended bar when I couldn't get a job in a firm to, you know, help pay the cost of going to law school. You know, the other option, I remember when I was a 2L, one of the attorneys who was the editor-in-chief of the Law Review ended up going to Weil Gotshal. Actually, he had taken a volunteer position his 2L summer. He didn't get a job at a firm. He was taking an unpaid position, and he said, "Listen, I put everything on the credit card. I went into debt. You know, it's scary to do. You know, it certainly is betting on yourself and kind of showing, you know, your hustle as Jason's pointed out. But sometimes, you know, that's the only option. You know, there are also personal loans available to you if you absolutely can't, you know, either get one of those part-time jobs. I understand tending bar is not really an option right now. So if you can't get that part-time job to pay the bills, there are personal loans generally available to professionals who graduate from med school or dental school or law school. to help you, kind of get on your feet at the start of your career. And, it's usually a limited pot of money, but it's something out there that you can use to pay the bills while you're volunteering in a position to get some legal experience, or you're just doing some of the things that Jason was talking about, or that Jennifer was talking about, and just calling people up and having these meetings. Obviously, there's no pay there for that. But if you think that is your part-time legal job now, because there isn't another job, then you can support yourself through one of those other means.
Jeff, I'm sorry, I have to take off. Good luck, everybody. And I put my email address in the chat if anybody needs to reach out. Thank you, Dean Fleischman, for the invitation.
Thanks, Josh. So I'm gonna go back up in the chat a little bit and ask Matt to weigh in. I know that you brought up earlier, you had a completely separate career in the software industry, before you went to law school. But let's kind of maybe do a hypothetical, since we're lawyers and we love these things. If you were if those experiences were closer for you and you were thinking about making a transition to the law immediately after that software industry collapse, or immediately after the world changed for your particular concentration or your trade, how would you approach that? Would you still say, what, it's difficult, and here's how I'm going to go about pursuing that other trade, that other concentration, that other dream of mine, or would you kind of stand back and say, what, now's not the time to make that jump?
Jeff, that's kind of a hard question because it's so subjective. And I think necessity drives a lot of decisions of this magnitude. And my decisions were no different. In transitioning out of a career in software, it wasn't really a choice. And I had to take jobs, and I had to do things that were not part of my dream. So I think, and echoing some of the other panel members' comments, it's about being willing to do whatever is necessary, even if you don't think it is part of, or you didn't plan it as part of your path. It means intermediate steps that are not necessarily items that you've defined as personal goals. And not giving up. If I could do anything differently, I would have less resistance. And I created resistance for myself about these transitions. It took me years to stop wanting to return to a career in software. It took me years to move off of my dreams for living in the Middle East. But I attribute some of that to just growing up and what happens in the world. I'm very grateful that I did not achieve certain dreams. Okay, I'm very grateful that I did not achieve the position that I was seeking in North Africa, because I would have arrived there a year before the Arab Spring. So, life evolves, and we have to adapt to it. So I guess my advice is keep an open mind, be willing to do things that are not your first choice and don't even seem necessarily related to your goals, but don't lose sight of your goals. Continue to pursue them.
Thank you. So I'm going to go off script a little bit here, but kind of maybe touch on some of these themes too. Jennifer brought it up. We're all just kind of sitting at home now, and yeah, some of us are working, but there's not a lot to do. We don't have those outlets, and I'm sure a lot of the students who are either graduating this year or going into a summer where they don't have a job, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of potential pitfalls to I don't know, start down a well of depression or something like that. As practicing attorneys, as people who are going through this world with the career that some of these students are hoping to achieve. Do you have any tips for maintaining a good mental health balance during this time that you might be able to pass on to them? Jen Showerman, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard and uncertain time for everyone. In the practice of law, without this economic downturn is a stressful situation. Whatever you can do to, take care of yourself, it's, whether it's exercise, finding a hobby or some sort of creative release to give yourself some time each day to, balance, the work and the looking for jobs and the stressful situation that results from that, and giving yourself a break every day. Don't spend 24 hours a day, job hunting and coming up with ways to keep yourself going. Give yourself a break once in a while. This is a marathon. You've got to treat it like that, and you've got to be in it for the long haul. And if you try, if you're working too hard in the beginning, you'll burn out. I'm sure a lot of us right now stuck working from home, you start to feel like you live where you work, and then there's no downtime, there's no off hours. So whatever you can do to kind of make a separation and give yourself that break and that release every once in a while is gonna keep you, mentally, in this for the long run, and so that you continue a legal career for a long time. You don't, burn out or get sick of it before you even start.
Jennifer, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I saw, I think it was like an internet meme the other day, 2 pie charts, what I thought would make me productive. And it's just 100% hard work. And then what actually makes me productive? It's like 30% hard work, 30% exercise, 30% social interaction, 30% sleep is such a big one. So I would echo what Jen said. Self-care is so important, especially right now. And sometimes when you're able to step back, I think you realize that maybe what you're doing and you're working so hard isn't necessarily the right approach. And maybe you end up meeting someone who leads to a job prospect when you're exercising. Now, I know we're not all out meeting new people right now, but it's not always pounding the pavement that leads to the connection that you're trying to make. So it's hard to stay well-rounded right now, but self-care is really important. And I think social interaction, even if it has to be on Zoom also.
Jason, do you have any tips?
Yeah, I would echo what Jen just said. Be effective. So with your time, it's easy to get caught up just thinking about the stuff all day. If that's what somebody's doing, the answer is spend your time working and not worrying. And I know I've used the term hustle a couple times on this one. Here's an example of what I mean by that. So I was interviewing for a law firm, job that I really wanted. And well, let me back it up one more. I was interviewing at a fund of funds called the Permale Group in New York City, a job that was way out of my experience range, a wild story how I found myself in the interview. But the interviewer asked me a question that I wasn't prepared to answer. And I didn't get the job. And it hurt, it felt terrible. But I said to myself, this is an opportunity to learn. And the one thing that I will never do again is be unprepared for an interview. So fast forward to the next one I had. The next one I had was for this law firm that I really wanted to do. So what did I do? I researched every piece of information available on the internet for everyone that was on that interview panel. Lo and behold, the decision maker turned out to be a college athlete from the 80s. You can go get their stats. Now, I'll tell you, it's pretty impressive in an interview when you're looking at potential candidates and one of them can tell you that you averaged 8 assists per game in 1984 and your team went to the Division III Final Four. So, the idea of like leave no stone left unturned, or if anybody has seen the movie Any Given Sunday, the Game of Inches speech, this is a game of inches. This is the legal profession. It's tough out there. And the margin between victory and defeat is small. And the way you make sure you capture that small margin is you fight for every inch that's out there. Every inch, meaning there are opportunities all around you to get better, to make networking connections, but you got to fight for them and you got to take care of them. So long-winded answer to back up Jen. Yes, be productive, take care of yourself, But when you are devoting that time to getting your job, be efficient with it. Be doing smart things. Be doing good research. Have a plan or have a program how to reach out to people. And when you find yourself in the spot where you've got the opportunity, you cannot lose that one for lack of preparation. Just not allowed.
Matt?
Jeff, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Do you have any tips for battling the potential mental health challenges that go along with, you know, being in this environment for these students? You're on mute. Yeah, you're
Thank you. I don't have tips on battling them, but they're real and they can't be overstated. And you know, the stress and anxiety and sleepless nights and discomfort that you've experienced during law school and will experience as you prepare for the bar are preparation for your career. There are a lot easier careers that any of us could pursue, but few that can be as gratifying and satisfying as the professions that you're embarking on.
Yeah, there's, you know, this time is like, you know, traditional studying for the bar on steroids, right? And when I talk to students generally, and we talk about, you know, your life during that summer right after you graduate, and you're trying to study for the bar exam, you know, I always said, you know, have another outlet. This is something that Jen said. You know, you got to have another outlet. You can't make that one thing your entire life, or you're going to drive yourself crazy. And, you know, whether that, you know, is in normal times, you know, being on a softball team in the summer, or you know, taking cooking classes or something like that. Now it's even more important to have those kinds of outlets. You know, you can sit there and obsess about, you know, not having a job, or whether your job is even going to, you know, be there, or the firm is going to be there at the end of, you know, this pandemic. But you can't focus on that. You do have to devote a lot of time to bettering yourself, to pursuing a job if you don't have one, to making connections, seeking out mentors. But if you make that your whole life, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. So find something that gives you, you know, joy, to balance out that anxiety that I know a lot of you are feeling every single day. You know, it can be cooking classes. It could be, you know, we don't have a lot of things outdoors now, but, you know, golf is now open. Take up golfing or something like that.
Small children, small children are helpful.
Yeah, there's, I never thought I'd get so much joy out of a stomp rocket. But that's something that we bought my kids, and even for me at my age, the stomp rocket is a lot of fun. So, I mean, with that, I think we're you know, 1:15. We've reached our hour. You know, Eileen or Mark, Lisa, I don't know if there's any other information we need to give the students.
I think if people have to leave, they could leave, but I think that you have a couple of questions that you haven't answered yet, and maybe you can go an extra 5 minutes.
Talk about change, that everything feels like a failure in the middle. And
yeah.
And so, you know, when you get to the end of all this, you'll look back and say, oh, that worked. That's how I got here. But sometimes when you're in the middle.
Lisa, you're cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry. In any case, thank you. Hang in there and use people to help you is what I will say. And definitely connect with the Career Services Office as you're looking for things.
Yeah, at least Lisa Bauer has a question in the chat here, which I think is useful. You know, whether the delay in the bar exam, and honestly, I just found this out the other day when I was talking to Eileen and Lisa and Mark. You know, whether the delay in the bar exam should change your job searching strategies. I would say no. You know, even in normal times, yes, you take the bar exam in July, but you know, you don't get those results until November. And as Josh pointed out earlier, we didn't even get sworn in until February. So even if everything was fine and you had a job with a law firm, you are starting your career and spending, more than half of that first year not admitted to the bar. So I don't think that you should be changing how you search for a job just based on the fact that the bar exam is now later. It's just a fact of the world now that legal employers are going to have to deal with, and I don't think there's going to be any kind of hesitance on their part in recognizing that fact.
And, I think law firms are, they know that that's the situation now and they're adapting. For example, at Woods Oviatt, we have our summer class working right now. They're all working remotely, but we had them, they're working now, and then, it's a kind of a spring program instead of a summer program. They'll lose out on a lot of those opportunities that you would have for an in-person experience, but we've got them doing work. So I think firms, in the legal profession, we understand that, these are changing times, and, for the most part, they're going to be willing to adapt and work, with people that are employed or looking for jobs. I'd say, don't change your job search. Don't put it off, if the bar is delayed, use that time now to, build up skills or, make connections and do whatever you need to do.
Hey guys, I've got something. I didn't see the question in our box here, but we get this one quite a bit from the students who are saying, geez, I'm a student at UB Law School. I'm trying to enter the UB job market. I've got very similar credentials to everybody else. How do I distinguish myself? How do I get to the top of that pile? And the anecdote that I use with the mentees is I tell them to think about a box, and the only things in that box are your actual life experiences. So your sales pitch, your potential employer, all you can use is what's in that box. You can't overstate your experience. You can't say you do something that you didn't do. But those things in those boxes, that's you. You have mastery of those things. So if my background was I was a surfer from California, my pitch, the way I'd be trying to sell myself to every potential employer is why being a surfer from California makes me uniquely qualified for this opportunity, and while it'll make me do it better than anyone else. I don't know if that's a winning argument, but that's the argument that you have. And I think for the students out there that are trying to distinguish themselves, it doesn't matter what you have, put it in a box and push that as hard as you can. And I would say from my personal perspective, it's very easy in an interview type situation to speak passionately and to show your skills when you're talking about those things, because you're surfing because you love surfing. Somebody wants to ask me about, I don't know, hiking Letchworth State Park, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mountain biking, snowboarding, any of these things I enjoy, I could talk about them for hours. So I would tell the students, don't underestimate your own life experience. If you're good enough to get into UB, you got all the horsepower you need to get where you're going to go. Just master those tools that you got in your box.
Yeah, Jen pointed out earlier, the law is inherently a customer service industry. So, a lot of people go through college as, a bartender or a waiter or waitress, or, somebody in a call center. All of those experiences you can use to sell an employer on, why those things will make you a better lawyer. It's kind of hard not to have a job that had some kind of contact with customers these days. But like Jason said, and as Jen pointed out, if you can draw on those experiences and show an employer that, like these are my grades and these are the classes that I took and this is the school that I graduated from, and all that's great, but we all got the same training. And so here's what I'm drawing on from other areas of my life or my past to make me a better lawyer. Are there any other questions? We haven't gotten a ton through the chat here. Mark, Lisa, you want to throw any our way?
I think everyone just did a great job putting people at ease.
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I just want to say everyone did a great job putting people at ease and inspiring them to action.
Oh, there's a new
And I would just add and reiterate, don't give up. Don't sell yourself short. You're good enough to get there. I remember applying for a position and working with the UB folks. In fact, someone on this call right now, I won't say who, but that person told me that I didn't have enough polish to get the particular job I was applying for. Interestingly, I got that job. I did just fine there. But don't believe any limitations that somebody else is telling you have, or you don't have the pedigree to get there. You have what you need. The thing that will set you apart is your grit and determination. And that's what determines success in life. Not who has the best grades or the best pedigree, who is willing to work the hardest and do what it takes. And if you're good enough to get in UB, you all got that in you.
I'd like to encourage our the law students who joined us today to keep their eyes out on our other programs. The Law Alumni Association is inviting our law students to all of our programming, whether it's for CLEs or this kind of discussion group. So please keep your eye out for it and take advantage of it, because we have wonderful alumni who all want to help you. If you haven't signed up on our mentoring platform, Career Connectors, please do so. We have about 100 alumni who have signed up and very few students. So that's a little discouraging. You can go on there. It's all about the students reaching out to alumni. You can reach out to any of our alumni all over the country. You decide who you want to talk to, and then you make it a date with them, a virtual date online. So please take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you for coming. I think we're done, Jeff?
I think
Are
so.
we done?
Yeah.
It was great. We appreciate so much our alumni from 2008 to 2010 who took part in this. You were great. We love our alumni.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll see you soon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye.